Welcome back to our channel. 1 cent penny, small but mighty, it holds history, value, and the power of change. The 1982 USA 1 cent penny may seem like an ordinary coin at first glance, but in the world of numismatics, it has a fascinating story that stands out. For those who don't closely examine their pennies, they might miss out on a hidden treasure, one that could be worth far more than just 1 cent. In fact, the 1982 penny has earned its place in history for a few reasons that make it unique, and one version of it can be worth as much as $140,000 today. To begin our story, we need to go back to the early 1980s when the U.S. economy was undergoing significant changes. The country was in the midst of inflation, and the cost of producing coins was rising rapidly. At the time, the U.S. Mint, which produces coins for the federal government, was facing a dilemma. The cost of manufacturing a 1 cent coin, which had been composed mostly of copper for decades, had grown to the point where it was more expensive to produce than the coin was worth. You see, pennies were originally made almost entirely of copper, an element that was valued for its durability, weight, and historical significance. However, as copper prices began to rise, the production cost of the penny became unsustainable. In response, the U.S. Mint decided to change the composition of the penny in 1982, marking a pivotal moment in the history of American coinage. This year saw the penny transition from being composed of 95% copper to a new composition made of 97.5% zinc, with a thin copper plating. The reason for this change was simple: it allowed the mint to reduce the cost of producing each penny by using a less expensive metal. However, this switch was not instantaneous. In fact, both copper and zinc pennies were struck during 1982, which is what makes the 1982 penny such an interesting and important coin for collectors. The transition between copper and zinc pennies wasn't an immediate switch on January 1, 1982. Instead, the mint phased it in gradually. Early in the year, pennies were still made of copper, but by mid-1982, the new zinc composition was already in circulation. This dual composition of pennies produced in the same year is a major reason why 1982 pennies are so fascinating. When people hear about the 1982 penny, they often think of the shift in metals, but they might not realize just how many variations of the coin exist from this year. This mix of copper and zinc pennies creates an exciting treasure hunt for collectors, as they seek to identify and understand the nuances between the different types of 1982 pennies. But before we delve into the different variations, let's take a look at the design of the 1982 penny. The U.S. penny has had several different designs over the years, but the one that remained consistent from 1909 through the 1980s was the iconic Lincoln cent design. The front, or obverse, of the coin featured a portrait of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, with the word Liberty etched along the top and the date of minting on the bottom. On the reverse side, the penny depicted a simple design featuring 2 stalks of wheat, which was a symbol of prosperity and the agricultural roots of the country. This design, known as the wheat cent, had been in use since 1909. However, in 1959, the U.S. Mint replaced the wheat stalks with a new design featuring the Lincoln Memorial, a tribute to the great leader after whom the coin was named. This design remained in place through 1982, giving the penny a consistent look for decades. The reverse design of the Lincoln Memorial penny is a poignant image of the memorial, with the words, E pluribus unum, meaning, out of many, one, inscribed above and United States of America, and 1 cent below. The key to the 1982 penny's uniqueness lies in the fact that, even though the design remained unchanged, the composition of the coin varied significantly. As mentioned earlier, the transition from copper to zinc meant that there were 2 distinct types of pennies produced in 1982. The first group, made before mid-1982, consisted of pennies struck from 95% copper, while the second group, produced after mid-1982, was made of 97.5% zinc, with a thin copper plating. The difference in composition isn't always easy to detect just by looking at the coin. To the naked eye, a copper penny and a zinc penny may appear very similar, especially after many years in circulation. However, there are subtle differences that collectors know to look for. Copper pennies from 1982 tend to have a heavier, more solid feel due to their higher copper content, while the zinc pennies are slightly lighter and may have a more metallic or shiny appearance due to the thin copper plating. But the differences between these 2 types of 1982 pennies go beyond just their weight or appearance. The change in composition had a significant impact on the way the coins were struck, leading to variations in their quality and condition. For example, the zinc pennies often have a tendency to corrode and wear more easily due to the thin copper coating, whereas the older copper pennies hold up better over time. The U.S. Mint's decision to switch the composition of the penny didn't only result in the creation of these two types of coins. It also led to one of the most famous and valuable error coins in American history. Some copper 1982 pennies were mistakenly struck with the new zinc composition dies, resulting in a hybrid coin that is composed of copper but features the characteristics of a zinc penny. This hybrid error, known as the copper 1982 D small date, is a prized rarity among collectors. These hybrid pennies are incredibly rare, and finding one is a stroke of luck for collectors. The reason these coins are so valuable is that only a few were ever produced, and they feature a unique blend of both copper and zinc characteristics. The 1982 copper penny with a small date is especially sought after, as the small date variety is already a rarity in its own right, and the error only increases its allure. The 1982 penny story would not be complete without exploring the impact that it has had on collectors. When the mint made the change in composition, few people realized the significance of the shift. Over time, however, the penny became a focal point for numismatists and those interested in the fascinating world of coin collecting. The hunt for the elusive copper 1982 penny with a small date error, as well as the quest to understand and differentiate the various types of 1982 pennies, has led to an entire market of collectors actively seeking these coins. As with any rare coin, the value of the 1982 pennies varies depending on several factors, including their composition, rarity, and condition. The standard copper 1982 pennies, while certainly collectible, are not typically worth more than their face value unless they are in particularly good condition. However, the value of the error coins and the rare hybrid pennies has been skyrocketing over the years, with some of the finest examples selling for tens of thousands of dollars. The real excitement, though, comes when discussing the most extraordinary example of a 1982 penny. As of today, one of the most famous examples of the 1982 copper penny with the small date error sold for an incredible $140,000. That's right, $140,000 for a penny that, just a few decades ago, was worth only 1 cent. This sale is a testament to the rarity and demand that exists for these special error coins and illustrates how the world of coin collecting can turn even the most ordinary seeming object into a highly valuable treasure. So, what makes this particular penny so valuable? It's the combination of rarity, condition, and the extraordinary mistake that makes it so prized. The hybrid nature of the coin, the fact that it's made of copper but struck with zinc dies, creates a unique artifact that cannot be found anywhere else. Additionally, the coin's condition is crucial. It must be in nearly pristine shape to command the high price. The buyer of this particular penny didn't just buy a coin, they purchased a piece of American history and numismatic lore. The 1982 penny, though seemingly ordinary, is anything but. From its historical context to its design and minting, and all the way to its collector appeal, it is a coin that encapsulates the fascinating intersection of economics, art, and rare errors. While many people may overlook their pennies, collectors understand that sometimes, even the smallest coins can hold tremendous value. And the 1982 copper penny with the small date error is a prime example of how a seemingly insignificant coin can be worth a small fortune. The 1986 USA 1-cent penny, a small, unassuming coin that most people carry around in their pockets or toss into jars, holds a fascinating history, an intriguing design, and a compelling story for collectors. For many, pennies are just pennies, worth little more than a cent. But for numismatists, or coin collectors, the world of pennies can be a treasure trove of surprises, filled with rarities, errors, and fascinating historical details that make even the most ordinary seeming coins incredibly valuable. And the 1986 penny is no exception. What makes this penny so unique, and why is it considered a key coin for many collectors? Let's take a deeper dive into the 1986 1-cent piece, uncovering its significance and its potential worth in the world of numismatics. To fully appreciate the 1986 penny, we need to step back in time and understand the context in which this coin was produced. The U.S. penny, also known as the 1-cent coin, has been a part of American life for centuries. Since its first minting in 1793, the penny has gone through numerous design changes and modifications. The most iconic penny design, however, has been the Lincoln cent, which was introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. This design featured a portrait of Lincoln on the obverse, front, and, for many years, 2 stalks of wheat on the reverse, back, a design known as the wheat cent. By 1959, the wheat cent was replaced by a new design featuring the Lincoln Memorial, which represented the enduring legacy of Lincoln as both a political leader and an icon of American democracy. The new reverse design of the Lincoln Memorial penny became the standard for American pennies until 2008, marking nearly 5 decades of continuous use. Now, let's focus on the year 1986. By this point, the Lincoln Memorial design had been in circulation for over 25 years, and the coin's design was starting to show signs of age. But even as the design itself remained largely unchanged, 1986 marked an important year in the history of U.S. coinage. The mint continued to strike millions of pennies each year, and in 1986, it was business as usual for the mint. However, there were some interesting developments during this period that would make 1986 pennies a notable part of the numismatic landscape. One of the first things collectors look for when examining coins from this era is the quality of the minting process. The U.S. Mint, which is responsible for producing American currency, had made improvements in the technology used to strike coins by the 1980s. This made coins like the 1986 penny particularly crisp and clean in their appearance. The sharpness of the strike, the clean lines, and the clarity of the design all contributed to the coin's appeal to collectors, as coins in pristine condition are always more valuable. But the real story of the 1986 penny lies in its design and the way it reflects the political and economic climate of the time. The 1986 penny featured the familiar Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, with the image of the Grand Monument to Abraham Lincoln in Washington, D.C. on full display. The obverse featured the familiar portrait of Lincoln, along with the words, "In God We Trust, Liberty, and the Year of Minting." Although the design had been in circulation for many years by 1986, there were some small, subtle changes in the quality of the coin due to improvements in minting technology. As a result, some 1986 pennies stand out due to their exceptional quality. Mint state, or MS, coins, which are coins that have never been in circulation and remain in pristine condition, are always highly coveted by collectors, and the 1986 penny is no exception. In fact, finding an uncirculated penny from this year in top-notch condition is a rare and prized discovery for collectors. Another important element to consider when evaluating the 1986 penny is its composition. Like most pennies struck after 1982, the 1986 penny was made from 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper. This composition was adopted in 1982 as a cost-saving measure due to the rising price of copper. The 1986 penny was minted using these materials, and this composition continues to be used in U.S. pennies to this day. While the composition may seem mundane at first, it has an important impact on the coin's value. The copper-plated zinc used in the 1986 penny is relatively soft compared to the older copper pennies, and this softness means that the coin can be easily scratched or damaged. As a result, pennies from this era that are found in mint condition, without scratches or discoloration, can be much more valuable than those that have been circulated for years. This is one reason why certain 1986 pennies are highly sought after by collectors, as they remain in pristine condition even after decades of existence. But the true value of the 1986 penny lies in its relative rarity compared to other pennies minted around the same time. Each year, billions of pennies are minted, but only a small percentage of those coins are well preserved enough to command top dollar on the collector's market. For example, many of the pennies minted in the 1980s were heavily circulated and show signs of wear, meaning they don't stand out in terms of quality or rarity. However, those that remain in perfect or near-perfect condition are a different story altogether. So, let's talk about the real value of the 1986 penny. As with any rare coin, the value depends on several factors, including rarity, demand, and condition. While the 1986 penny in general may not be worth much beyond its face value, certain variations and examples of the coin are highly prized by collectors. For example, a 1986 penny in pristine, uncirculated condition can be worth anywhere from $5 to $50, depending on its overall grade. However, as the condition of the coin improves, so does its value. Coins that are graded higher, such as those in mint state 67 or higher, can command prices well above the average, reaching several $100s. But there is one key factor that takes the value of the 1986 penny to an entirely different level. One of the rarest and most sought-after variations of the 1986 penny is the 1986 double-die penny. This coin, struck with an error during the minting process, features a slight doubling effect on the date and other parts of the design. This mistake is a rarity, and only a few examples of the 1986 double-die penny exist. As is often the case with error coins, the value of these pieces skyrockets due to their rarity and the unique characteristics they possess. In fact, well-preserved 1986 double-die pennies have been known to sell for thousands of dollars, and some even reach six-figure prices in the right conditions. A coin that has been perfectly preserved, featuring the double-die error, could fetch prices of up to $130,000 or more. That's right, a penny worth just 1 cent could turn into a windfall worth tens of thousands of dollars. Why does this happen? It's all about rarity and collector demand. Error coins, especially those that involve doubling, are highly sought after by collectors who specialize in this niche. The rarity of the error, combined with the high demand from numismatists looking to add unique pieces to their collections, drives the price of the 1986 double-die penny to extraordinary heights. The 1986 penny is an example of how even the smallest details, such as a minting error or the quality of the coin, can have a major impact on its value. In the case of the 1986 double-die penny, the fact that only a small number of these coins were produced makes them rare, and that rarity makes them incredibly valuable. So, the next time you find yourself holding a 1986 penny, take a moment to examine it closely. It could very well be worth far more than its face value. And if you're lucky enough to have found a 1986 double-die penny, you might just be holding a small fortune in your hand, one worth $130,000 or even more. In the world of coin collecting, pennies like the 1986 USA 1-cent penny are far from ordinary. They're small pieces of history, rich in stories and value. Whether they're rare error coins, well-preserved examples, or just a part of a collector's journey, they remind us that the world of numismatics is filled with surprises, and sometimes, it's the smallest coins that turn out to be the most valuable.